So moving on to my research contributions, it doesn't have to be manuscripts that you've published. It could honestly be anything. So the first one for me was my article in Neuroimage. And notice how I put cited by this many people and what my contribution was. I put my master's thesis, which was on chronic pain and nucleus accumbens' role in acute and chronic pain. I also talked about the conferences that I went to, where I presented the work. I won an award for the conference that I presented my research on. I did the 3-minute thesis. So it's all about combining all of these together so you really maximize what you can say in such a limited space. So the third one was a first authorship paper that I did during my undergraduate degree. You can go ahead and read it. The fourth one was, it wasn't an article, it wasn't a manuscript, but it was a poster. And this was important to me because this was already during my PhD. And I did the quality control, and I did a poster about the quality control pipeline that I used because I had a lot of data to go through. And the fifth one, I wasn't first author, but I was second author on this paper, and it was a manuscript done during my undergraduate degree. And there's also a section where you can do your special circumstances. So that was my Vanier application. I hope you learned a lot from that. And now we're going to move on to the Canadian Common CV, which is something you'll have to also submit with the new harmonized scholarship portal. And this outlines everything you've done, all the research you've done throughout your entire life, the degrees you have. So as you can see what I'm doing right here, I had a bachelor's degree, master's, and as well I'm doing the MD PhD program. And then you move on to the credentials that you have. Just put everything in there. That's what I would advise. You can pause this, read it. I did the BLS certificate and I have an ethics certificate as well. And notice how I combine not only my academic recognitions right here, for example, but also my extracurriculars. And notice also for other awards, it's important to include how competitive it is. So for example, there's 5 spots and over 70 applicants, as well as the monetary value. I also included the distinctions that I've had in academics. So for example, in 2018, during my undergrad, I was a top 3% academically. Then they go into employment. I put that I was a senior residence advisor, content creator, I was a research assistant, a metadata student, so forth. Again, put everything that you feel comfortable with. And then they also have space to include your publications. So put all your publications, goes without saying. We've already seen some of mine. There's also an opportunity to elaborate on your contribution to the publication. The next room on the Canadian Common CV is your thesis or dissertation. I talk about my master's thesis as well as my honors thesis here. There's also an opportunity for working papers. These ones are in the process of being submitted. So the next section is for working papers. This is the only section where I wouldn't put like 5 or 6 papers, just because it doesn't look good that it's like, okay, well, you have so many papers in the pipeline, but maybe you should focus on trying to submit fewer, but actually getting them published. So I put 2 right here. These were both from my master's thesis. So the next is conference publications, and I have 2 here. So artistic contributions, this is what I mean when I talk about just include everything. So I was an advertisement actor for what's called Return It, which is like a recycling program. And finally, you have the presentations. So these include poster presentations. These include talks that you've done, oral presentations as well. So here I have 7. I've done some mentoring activities. I've mentored undergraduate students, so include that. I've been a reviewer for Neuroimage, although I've only refereed 1 work. For volunteer activities, I volunteered on the medical team at a music festival called Shambhala. I was on the rowing team, Loaded Ladle. So again, just include all that you have and just describe what your role was. And then if you're on any committees, include that as well as the memberships that you have. So that's a Canadian Common CV. So now I also wanted to show you what could have made my application better. And hopefully this will also help you improve your application. Because of course my application isn't perfect. Although I got it, I could have improved on some stuff. So maybe you'll learn something from this. And it's also just good to improve in general. Candidates' motivations and training expectations are clear and focused. Proposal topic is interesting and pertinent. An outstanding record of a publication and presentations. Relevant experience, 4.8. So did better there. Just greasing me up here. And said I have strong sponsor letters. And I show the history of receiving institutional, provincial, and national awards, and have a record for volunteering. And note that these are the comments for CGS-D, so they still look at community outreach and volunteering. So these are the second reviewer's comments for the CGS-D. So research ability or potential was a 4.5, and relevant experiences was a 4.2. So in terms of the strengths, pretty much the reviewer 2 said the same thing as reviewer 1, but let's focus on the weaknesses here. So they said, in terms of the research environment, I could have discussed more why UBC as an institution is the right place for this research, as opposed to just talking about the network of researchers that I have. And you can see this a little bit in my Vanier application, so I think this is a valid comment. Maybe a little bit nitpicky, but fair enough. Especially considering that this research relies heavily on a specific patient population, which takes years to establish. It would be helpful to discuss the benefits of this patient population at UBC and BC, and how this may not be the same at other institutions. So in your own application, it's important to include why that specific institution is, I think, the main point here. What makes this environment unique? Furthermore, what makes mentorship under their current supervisor unique to something found elsewhere? Does this environment provide access to facilities, equipment, etc., not found elsewhere? They talk about while well written, the research proposal would benefit for a little more delineation between aims 1 and 2. And the last point that the reviewer had is that I just merely considered sex and gender as a factor in my research studies. So they wanted me to potentially hypothesize on what could be used from the clinical trial to better infer sex and gender implications from my research. Again, I think another valid point. And there's a box in the CGS-D application where you can say, how are you going to assess the differences, sex or gender differences? So I think that's an important point. Some key takeaways that I have from this whole process of me doing this were apply to every opportunity that you have access to. Search the web, you have AI tools, ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, whatever, that can search the internet for you and find these scholarship opportunities. Sure, it takes work, but if you don't do anything, you're never gonna get anywhere. So it's challenging, but just apply. The more you do, the more you write, the more you do this process, the better that you become at it. So I think that's one major key takeaway. Find these opportunities and just apply to them. And number 2, you really have to refine your application, refine your research proposal. I don't even know how many rounds of edits I did, but definitely in the 20s, 30s, or even 40s. I did so many rounds of edits once I finished a rough draft. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. If it was at all helpful, feel free to give me a like and subscribe. There's more opportunities maybe in the description. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And until next time, Silverbacks, peace out.